judges are not speaking. That is not the way to decide elections.
Well, George Lemieux, in Florida, which has certainly had its election problems going back at least to 2000, and Governor Christ, with whom you worked with, has taken a lead in saying a version of, whoa, we're not going to get carried away with all this technology. We're going to go back to basics. Has it or has it not occurred to you today in seeing these long lines where some people stood in line 8 or 9 hours to vote, and still having a lot of difficulty with electronic voting machines, whether they're optical scan or otherwise? Is it or is it not time for a national effort on the federal level to say we have to get a grip on election day, or is it just the way it's going to go in a big continental country such as ours?
Well, I'm a big believer in trying to make uniform elections across the country. It makes a lot of sense. As you said, Governor Christ has really tried to get us back to a place where there is a paper record, where there would not be doubt about voting. He extended the voting hours, which was some folks in the Republican Party weren't very happy about, but he thought he had an obligation as governor to serve the citizens and to extend the voting hours, which, based upon this kind of possible record turnout we've had, I think was a very good idea. But we need to do everything we can to encourage people to vote and accommodate them when they do vote and make sure that we don't have a system that's going to fail. It's a human process, so you're going to have human problems, but it's certainly better in Florida than it's been in recent times.
Well, thanks. I'll come back to you later on. Welcome back to our special election night coverage here on Dan Rather Reports. Republicans lose a Senate seat in New Hampshire. That is the bulletin of the hour. We feel confident in saying when all the votes are in and tabulated that Jeanine Shaheen will have unseated Republican John Sununu in a particularly hard-fought and bitter Senate race in New Hampshire. That'll be a pickup for the Democrats in the Senate. Now also, as we pass this 9 o'clock hour, we have closing time in some additional states, and our 9 o'clock closing times include all of these states which have just turned yellow for you there, including some big ones, Texas, which is virtually assured of staying in the Republican camp with John McCain. But as we go through this map, New Mexico, Colorado have just had their voting places close. Those were two states that had previously voted for President Bush, and the McCain camp thought they could keep. The Obama camp thought they could take him away. How soon we'll have any meaningful information out of those states, we simply can't say, because remember, we're still hanging on not knowing how things have gone in Virginia, Ohio, Indiana, which we started tonight saying are focus states. However, we have said and been saying for some time now that Pennsylvania is in Obama's camp, which makes it almost a desperate situation for John McCain to hold on to what has been Republican presidential territory in Florida. So let's get to this hour's poll closing. Just a review for you. Wyoming, by the way, again, not a surprise here, home state of Vice President Cheney. Its 3 electoral votes will go to John McCain. And same way, no surprise here, that Michigan, a state that at one time John McCain and the Republicans thought they could win 17 electoral votes in Michigan. We feel pretty sure about saying, in fact, we're assured of saying, trust us on this one, 17 electoral votes from Michigan go to Barack Obama. Obama is beginning to roll, but not time to say he's rolling like a big wheel through a cotton field or something. That he's gotten some big states going his way, Pennsylvania and Michigan going his way. Things in Florida not called, but Florida, some signs out of there that the McCain people would have to be worrying about. This is the drama of election night, and what an election, 2 years long. And turnout, we don't know the final turnout figures, but it figures to be among the highest, certainly in recent history, going to be very high. Interest and enthusiasm with the campaign, yes, downside of it, $2 or $3 billion, that's what it would be, folks. We want to talk about sometime tonight, who gives that kind of money to whom, expecting to get what. But right now, that we're concentrating on trying to keep you as up to date as possible with results, being cautious. We don't mind being second at anything. We want to be right. The voting has just ended in Arizona as well as in Colorado. Now, here's the electoral vote map as we see it. The states in red are ones that we have said with some confidence, we think, in fact, with great confidence, have been carried by John McCain. South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Oklahoma, and Wyoming. Now, the other states, the ones in dark blue, the contrast may not be as much as we'd like there, but Illinois has gone for Senator Obama, his home state. Pennsylvania has gone for Obama. The Northeast has been solidly for Obama. And we now project once again, little surprise here, 31 electoral votes from New York, big chunk of electoral votes fall into line for Barack Obama. And so now Barack Obama has at least 103 electoral votes. I say at least 103 electoral votes. Donnie, do you want to say something?
It's about 150 to 37. But if you look at the big map, what you'll notice is there is not a single state on that map now that has switched from 2004. We haven't had a single state move yet.
All right, so it's 150. We're a little behind on that tabulation at the bottom of the screen we're stuck with. Projected winner in Rhode Island, here 4 electoral votes. This was expected to go this way. So with 270 electoral votes needed to win, Barack Obama has opened up a pretty good lead, particularly now when he gets Wisconsin's 10 electoral votes. There was a time when a well-known political strategist, who's particularly well-known to my friend Todd Harris here, said, look, McCain's going to give up in Michigan because we may have a fighting chance in Wisconsin. Well, if they had a fighting chance, it didn't turn out to be a successful one because Wisconsin now falls in line for Barack Obama. So Barack Obama's total, help me here, Donnie, he's been helping all evening with the map.
165 to 37.
165 to 37. Now you look at that and you might be saying, okay, Mom, I think it's time to go to bed. It ain't over till it's over, but when it's over, and I think it's over. I can see someone saying that in the living room. Well, wait just a moment. Still a lot of votes out there. If you want to make an assumption, keeping in mind that assumption is frequently the mother of all foul up, if you want to make an assumption that all the rest of the country is going to fall in line pretty much the way the pundits said so, well, okay, you can put on pajamas and take it in. However, just because there's a long lead here for Obama, and because he's built up a lead now, it's not to the point that anybody is going to come close to saying that this election is Barack Obama's. We've got a ways to go there because Ohio is still out, Virginia is still out, all the states in the Rocky Mountain areas where the polls have just closed, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Nevada, all these states in yellow have just had the polls closed. So it's not over, and again, once again, it's not a case of just trying to convince you to keep in front of the television. It's just a fact of election night life. But Barack Obama has opened up a sizable lead in the electoral map with 165 electoral votes and with 270 needed to win. And again, we show you the map, dark blue, states carried by Barack Obama. In the red, states carried by John McCain, and all the rest of the map being undecided.
And still nothing different from 2004.
And good point, Donnie Fowler. Minnesota's 10 electoral votes fall into line for Barack Obama, but nothing different from 2004. Todd, do you have something you want to add on to that?
Yeah, just as we call Minnesota, and you talked earlier about Michigan, Wisconsin, it's important to put some of these states into the larger context, the industrial Midwest. This was an area that Republicans that we had high hopes for. Remember, our convention was put in Minnesota specifically, expressly, because we felt that this was a state that with the right candidate and the right environment that we could swing into the red column. Michigan, a state that John McCain won in the 2000 primary against George W. Bush. It was we had won in New Hampshire, we lost in South Carolina, we came back and won in Michigan, and that was a new lease on life for the campaign. Clearly, that state going to Obama, Wisconsin going to Obama, Minnesota going to Obama. This was fertile ground just 6 months ago, at least in terms of Republican hopes and aspirations. And I'm sorry for my friend John McCain that it's not coming to fruition.
Your point. Alabama, as expected, sends its 9 electoral votes to John McCain. According to our calculations, we project that he will have won in Alabama. To Nate Silver. Nate, you had something you wanted to add in here?
Map now, and to see all the carry states that McCain hoped to compete in, states like a Wisconsin or a Minnesota, have already been called for Obama, and they're quick calls too, where you have a state like Arkansas, it's already been out 40 minutes, you can't make a call there. But Minnesota, where they had their convention, Wisconsin, which was the closest state in the country in 2004, these are quick calls for Obama. That's a very good sign for him. He just needs to flip one of those big Bush states, again, all the ones that are out there right now, like Florida, like Virginia, or Colorado as you move west. He needs just one of these kind of lottery tickets to come in, and he's ahead now in Florida. I think he is the favorite right now.
Right. And let me ask you, Dahlia Lithwick, what happened? Todd was talking earlier. The Republicans had some hope. Okay, we'll hold our convention in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and we'll plant our flag in the upper Midwest, and that'll stand us in good stead. And then there was that period where they said, okay, the Democrats chose Obama over Hillary Clinton. We have a chance to get much of a greater percentage of the women's vote than we got before. What happened?
Well, I think two things happened. If the question is how smart was the Sarah Palin pick, I think that it was unsmart at two levels. I think it was a mistake to sort of, at the most fundamental level, think that any old uterus would do. That as long as you had a woman, all those disaffected Hillary voters would simply pivot and without any thought or scrutiny, transfer that affection. I think that was truly the fundamental mistake. And then the other mistake was just not vetting the women they picked. I think that Sarah Palin would have been a very, very credible and interesting candidate in 10 years when she was seasoned and experienced and tempered, barring some of Troopergate and other disasters that have befallen her. But I think she is a very talented politician who at every single level was not ready to be vice president, and certainly not ready to be turned into vice president in 2 weeks. I mean, she could have probably pulled it off. And I think you even see it now. Her more recent appearances, even on Saturday Night Live, show that she's learning how to do this. She wasn't ready in September.
Well, we want to have a discussion up on our screen. We've had recently Ohio, which has not been called yet. This is the official vote counting. You can see a small number of precincts reporting even here. With Barack Obama showing an early lead, what the horse race fans call an early foot in Ohio. Does this mean he's going to win Ohio? Never mind by that kind of margin. No. It may be a while. It's already been a long while. The polls have been closed in Ohio for well over 2 hours now. But that's the way things look in Ohio just at the moment. Todd, I want to pick up on one thing. We may come back to this later on. That Dahlia was making the point, well, the Sarah Palin choice looked good for McCain for at least a little while right after the conventions, but then for other reasons, a lot of people began to have second thoughts about it. Was it a case of she was not up to the campaign in the early going, or a case, rightly or wrongly, justifiably or unjustifiably, a lot of people said, wait a minute, that calls into question John McCain's judgment, which before then has been one of the strengths of his campaign.
I think on a micro level, people can and probably will blame the way that she was rolled out, the way that she was briefed. But on a macro level, my guess is that, certainly most Republicans who are not base party activists already feel this way. And my guess is that history will probably reflect her choice as not the best choice that Senator McCain could have made. He was getting some real traction throughout the summer with the experience message. When you look at polling, even as recently as the other day, when you ask people, what is your biggest reservation about Barack Obama? They say I'm not sure he has the experience. So we end the race where we began with Barack Obama, people questioning his experience. The McCain campaign gave up that line of attack the minute they put her on the ticket.
I want to put up some numbers in Florida, which I think we have. Keep in mind that we haven't called Florida. We haven't put Florida in anybody's column yet. But George Lemieux, who's with us here and has worked with Arkansas, has been called. Let me double check that, folks. Arkansas sends its 6 electoral votes to John McCain. Here again, a state that was fought over fairly hard. In recent presidential elections has gone first one way and then the other, partly because of the candidacy of former President Bill Clinton. But nonetheless, Arkansas goes to John McCain. But I want to come back to Florida, George. When we put up those numbers in Florida, showing that it's reasonably close in there, do you see anything in the numbers you're looking at that gives John McCain a real hope of carrying the state?
Well, the best news for John McCain might still be that in the Panhandle, Western Florida, which is called Victory Lane by Republicans, because that area really turns out for Republicans, only about half of those votes are in. So there is going to be some pickup there. Also, Sarasota is only reporting 6% of the vote. That's in Southwest Florida, south of Tampa, and we should do pretty well as Republicans in that part of the state. The challenge, the areas we've talked about before, Duval being tied, being down in orange by a considerable amount, and then not getting, really not having all of Southeast Florida in yet. We only have 27% of Broward in, and the numbers there now are 72% Obama, 27% McCain. That's looks like a year 2000 sort of turnout for Democrats, which made our state very close. The difference being in 2000, George Bush was still winning the central part of the state. So I still think the structure is bad. It is still close. I mean, we're talking, my total here, and I'm getting this right from the Secretary of State, is 3,072,000 votes for Barack Obama and 2,967,000 for John McCain. So we are still a very tight race. But I think still structurally, unless some things change, I would, there's not as much hope as you would want to see if you're a Republican for John McCain.
Well, you say tight, though, in Florida. Are we talking about girdle tight or something looser than that?
I can't speak to a girdle, but I think it's going to be close. I mean, this state, no matter who wins, is going to be a 2-point race. It's going to be a 51-49, maybe at most a 52-48. So it is going to be close. I don't think we necessarily are going to be in recount close, but we'll have to see. I'm really watching Broward and Palm Beach County. Palm Beach County only has 23% of the vote in. Right now, Obama's ahead 66% to 33%. That's not a good number for John McCain. John McCain wants 40% out of Palm Beach County. Miami-Dade County's 41% in, and Obama's up 60-40. But that's only, I'm sorry if I said 40%, it's only 20% in. So those structurally are not looking so good for John McCain. We still need to see what happens in the Panhandle, still need to see what happens in Sarasota, but right now you'd have to think that the map favors Senator Obama.
And Dahlia Lithwick, besides writing about court things and legal things, keep an eye on the overall picture. What strikes you at this hour? Are you beginning to think in your own mind, okay, this may be an outstanding victory for Senator Barack Obama, or are you still holding back in your own mind saying, well, I want to see something else?
Like I said, I lived through 2000, so I don't know that even when this is over, I'm going to be up chewing my nails. But I'll be up chewing my nails through January. But I think that what I'm seeing is what I even see in my home state of Virginia, which is I think something dramatic is happening in this country that is post-race, post-gender, post-map, post-old red-blue map. And I really saw it in Virginia. I tried to report out a little this week why Virginia was in play for the first time since 1964. And I think that it's not, the easy shorthanded answer is, oh, it's all those foreigners in Northern Virginia. They've all moved from New York and they've settled in Fairfax and they're mucking up the state. But it's not really true. Obama, and we don't know what's happening with Virginia. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But Obama made some real inroads in Danville, in the southern parts, in Southside Virginia. So I don't think it's as simple as saying, North-South, blue-red, white-collar men, black women. I think it's a much more nuanced and complicated race this time. And certainly, as I said, it's very, very interesting to look at Virginia as a sort of little miniature model of how this is playing out.
And by the way, this is a live picture from Chicago, Illinois, and the crowd gathering at Grant Field in downtown Chicago, anticipating somewhere along the line a call, no official word, but a call that Barack Obama will be the next president of the United States. But if you're just joining us here, or you've been out watching something else for a while and coming back, where we are in making our judgment here, and let me just speak for myself, is it's not over. John McCain, there's still enough states out there by quite a few, enough states. It would take some surprises for him now to win, but he can win. In poker terms, what John McCain is doing is trying to draw to the proverbial inside straight. If Florida were to drop, Pennsylvania already having dropped for Obama in the call business, if Florida would drop, then you would have, in my own personal judgment, a John McCain having to draw 2 cards to an inside straight, which makes it much more difficult, but not, at least not yet, impossible. Nate Silver, if you're monitoring this over in the War Room, I seem to recall something a while back. They had something you wanted to contribute. If it's not a good time, just send up a flare and we'll move on.
I can talk, I think.
Go ahead. North Carolina. These are the figures in North Carolina with 15 electoral votes at stake there. This was with 40% of the precincts reporting. And again, it makes a very, it's key to know where those precincts are. But Nate, what are you seeing, what are you hearing there on 538.com and with your other sources around that you think we ought to be paying some attention to right now?
Well, looking at North Carolina, a couple of these other states, one thing that's tough to reckon with this year is that because you had such a big early vote, and because that vote in most states went for Obama, some states report their early vote first, some report it last, some somewhere in the middle. So it makes it kind of hard to look at these numbers at face value and know exactly what's going on. In North Carolina, for instance, we saw Obama jump out to a big lead early. That was probably the early vote, and now McCain is closing, and it should wind up being very close. We're going to have, I think, 5 or 6 states decided by 1, 2, or 3 points right now. So nothing has broken yet for McCain, but you know, any minute now we could get one of these states called, and then that could basically tell us where the rest of the night's going to be headed.
Well, exactly. I want to remind you in the audience that we're trying to keep up to date on the Senate races as well as the makeup of Congress, but cautionary note, born of experience in past elections. With the Senate, a picture should begin forming when some of the bigger state results are known. For example, in North Carolina, we know it's a pickup for the Democrats. We say we know that that's our best projection. We've called it for the Democrat in the Senate race in North Carolina. But we should be able to, as time goes along here, before the 11 o'clock or midnight hour in the East, be able to make some sense of what's developed with the Senate. With the House of Representatives, where the Democrats are anticipating, they're hoping for substantial pickups. With the House races, what frequently happens is you don't know until the wee hours of the morning how many of the House races turn out, and it may very well be sometime mid-morning tomorrow or even later before you could talk about the makeup of the House. So while we're covering some key congressional races, we'll put you in the picture as best we can. We want you to understand why we're not talking about the House very much, because frankly, not that much is known. The Senate picture is beginning to form up, and we'll pass that along. In fact, Donnie Fowler, bring us up to date on what you know about the Senate races. Big win for the Democrats in North Carolina. Doesn't mean Obama is necessarily going to carry the state, but defeating Elizabeth Dole in North Carolina, no small chore for the Democrats, but they've done it.
That's a tough race. She was originally a really strong candidate. The Democrats have now picked up 3 Senate seats. Virginia, which went for Mark Warner, was Republican. New Hampshire, which was a Republican named John Sununu, now the former governor Gene Shaheen, and North Carolina, as you just mentioned. The other interesting thing is that the Senate Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, is in the fight for his life, and that really never should have happened. Not saying that Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader, is going to lose, but he's probably sweating.
And as we move westward, I hate to be the bearer of so much bad news for my own party, but you look at states like Minnesota, where you've got Norm Coleman. Under any normal circumstance, Norm Coleman he would always have a tough election, but he would have been reelected. You look at a state like Oregon with Gordon Smith, another a very moderate Republican under normal circumstances, probably would have been sailed to reelection. He's going to have, we don't know what will happen in Oregon, but he's going to have a very close race. And then also, just let me add, in New Mexico and Colorado, the two Udalls, who by all measures will probably have pretty easy nights tonight. So there are, already significant numbers of new Democrats coming into the Senate.
Thank you, Todd. And we'll come back to the Senate again. The reason I looked a little edgy there where you're talking about it is that two of the over-the-airways networks have called Ohio for Obama. Again, we're not there yet. Working with the Associated Press, these, what you see up on the screen, these are precincts, their tallies actually in and reported. And this is the margin showing with what, 9-10% of the precincts reporting. These are the margins in Ohio. Now, that two over-the-airways networks have called Ohio for Barack Obama. We're saying to you it may indeed go that way, but we work closely with the Associated Press here, and as I've said before, we're cautious with no apology. We're not yet at least, prepared to say which way Ohio is going to go. But you have a situation now, again, the map is beginning to form out. In fact, we get our map up here, that Barack Obama has carried Pennsylvania. Keep in mind that John Kerry carried Pennsylvania the last time. What's forming up here is that Barack Obama is carrying every state that John Kerry carried the last time. What he needs to do is, all right, if that's going to be the pattern, then he only needs to pick up one other state. If he carries every state that John Kerry carried the last time, he only needs one other state. And that other state could be Ohio, because keep in mind that after a really knockdown, drag them out, sort of Pier 6 fight in Ohio the last time, George Bush carried it. So if those networks who are now saying Ohio goes to Obama are correct, irony of ironies, it could be that Ohio is the state that puts Obama over the top. But reminding you, as I remind myself, we're talking about could be here. So just have it said, some say Ohio has gone for Obama. We are not yet at that point. We're not at the point, and so far as I know, nobody's at the point saying that Florida is going one way or the other. The portents in Florida at the moment don't look all that promising for John McCain, but we'll see how that goes. Now, if we can put up our map, once again, I'm not sure we can do that. Keep in mind, it's live television here. It takes a little while to get these maps up. But the places where we've been hanging for a long time with focus, Virginia and Indiana. Remember, they had their polls closed early on. At 7 o'clock, all the polls were closed in Indiana. All the polls were closed in Virginia at 7 o'clock. So we were saying to ourselves at that time, these are two states to focus on because they may be portents of what, there may be indicators, signals of what may be happening later on in the evening. But things apparently so close in both of those states that neither one of them have been called. And then the pendulum moved on. Pennsylvania, place to watch. Having said that, both those inside the McCain camp and the Democrats said, hard to put together any real arithmetic that John McCain wins if he doesn't carry Pennsylvania. Well, he hasn't carried Pennsylvania. So now we shift down to Florida to say, well, if Florida doesn't go for McCain, doesn't mean it's a complete knockout. It does mean he's getting pretty far behind on points. Now, Adalia, we haven't had a chance to talk to you as much as I hope we would and as time goes along. But as you're looking at your computer there and staying in touch with your contacts and reading the things you know, is there something we're missing here? Is there some salient point we should be directing people and say to folks, pay attention to this?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. You know, it's interesting because this election, everybody says, comes down to the economy, and it does, and to the war, and it does. But you, I hope, remember that we did a show about the rule of law in the Bush administration, about torture and warrantless wiretapping and executive signing statements and all that stuff. And one of the things that I think fell out of this campaign very early and really fell out hard was the issue of what's happened to the rule of law in this country in the last 8 years. And across the boards, we just don't hear the word Guantanamo. We don't hear the word habeas corpus. I heard the word Guantanamo once between the GOP convention and the Democrat convention. And I think one of the things that I would urge people to really think about going forward is how do we put that piece back in play here. We haven't talked about it in the campaign, and I admit I'm a Supreme Court reporter, that's my bias, but I think that that's one of the seminal things that we need to really refocus on going forward is what do we do about Guantanamo? What do we do about waterboarding? What do we do about the notion that if the president says it, it must be legal? That kind of thing cannot go unaddressed going forward. I don't care if it's Obama or McCain who's in the Oval Office. Those are issues that really need to get back on the front burner as far as I'm concerned.
You make a point about what was and wasn't discussed very much in the campaign. Were you not surprised that as the campaign went along, there was so little talk about the wars we're in Iraq and Afghanistan? Some conversation about Afghanistan, but you know, there was a point earlier this year when you said the war is going to be front and center. Why do you suppose that is, or do you agree with it?
No, I think it fell out also, or it got shorthanded to a very, very truncated discussion about, I'm going to get us out of Iraq, we're going to stay the course. It was a very compressed, almost analysis-free discussion. I think the answer is not necessarily a heartening one. I think that this was the race of identity politics. And we got so consumed talking about the role of gender, the role of race, talking about whatever it was that we saw in these candidates that we identified with. A colleague at Slate called it the eHarmony election, where we fell in love with the candidate we wanted to marry instead of the candidate who could lead. And I think that that theme, that trope of let's just keep talking about gender, let's keep talking about what it is to be a white working man, let's talk about Joe the plumber, let's talk about all these issues that seem to me to be very, very much obsessed with navel gazing, with who I am as opposed to who this country is, why are we in a war, what happened to the economy. So I think that one of the things we need to, again, as we regroup, is think of this as a sort of drunken identity politics spree. We fell in love for this campaign with talking about ourselves, and it was interesting, but it's got to end.
Well, it's 9:30 in the East. As this election night rolls on, and by the way, I hope you saw up on our screen, North Dakota stays Republican in presidential politics. Our estimate, our projection with the Associated Press is that North Dakota, its 3 electoral votes will go to John McCain. So this is the way your electoral map looks at the moment. Again, John McCain has carried states that George Bush carried before. He's not broken out and carried a single state that was not carried by George Bush so far. He has some prospects there. The states in darker blue are states that have been put in Barack Obama's column. According to our best judgment, our projections are those are the ones who carried. And again, not a single state has Barack Obama carried that wasn't carried by John Kerry, but he's carrying all the states that John Kerry carried before.
And quickly.
And quickly, as Donnie Fowler mentioned before. And this is, by the way, just in the Alabama Senate race. Jeff Sessions handily beating his opponent in that Senate race. And check me here, Donnie, certainly no surprise with this. But
No, he's a strong incumbent Republican senator.
Well, exactly, but by the way, things are beginning to fall in. Kansas, this is a surprise to no one, sends 6 electoral votes, as it usually does for the Republican presidential candidate. And the pattern continues here. John McCain is carrying the states that George Bush carried the last time. And Barack Obama is carrying the states that Senator John Kerry carried the last time. However, Ohio very much in focus at the moment, having been called by some other networks as falling in the Obama column. That could underscore the word, italicize it, could be the state that, okay, for once, at least once, that Senator Barack Obama is going to carry a state that was carried the last time by President Bush. But Mark, well, we have not here at Dan Rather Reports on HDNet, and with the Associated Press, have not put Ohio in the Obama column. So this is the way the overall map looks now, in the red for McCain, dark blue, with all the other states, some of those states that polls haven't closed out on the far west coast, California, Oregon, Washington, and so forth. Now, in Ohio, remember, I'm just reminding you, these are actual votes in and counted. This is what it looks like. This is one of the reasons that some other places are calling the race for Obama and saying Ohio goes to Obama. But, folks, keep in mind that those of you who are of memory age or were alive at the time in the 2000 election, that Florida was called at least 3 times up and down one way or the other, to my own personal and painful knowledge. So it's one reason that we keep say, okay, others may be calling Ohio, but we're not there yet. Now, we're going to pull back again to sort of get a broader picture about what's known so far and what's taking shape so far. If Greg Dobbs is up with some of the election problems of the day, I'd look with favor in the control room of getting him up now, because we have a good time to do that. But if this is not a time, just tell me in the air and we won't do it. Greg, what are you hearing about voting irregularities? So we haven't been to you in a while, just want to keep ourselves up to date. Any troubles out, particularly on the West Coast?
Not so far on the West Coast, but still, in fact, on the East Coast and some in the Rocky Mountains. On the East Coast, there are still people standing in line in Florida, although the polls closed, 2.5 hours ago. As long as you're in line by the time polls are scheduled to close, federal law dictates you will be able to vote. But it suggests that some people might have gone away with too long a wait and they will feel disenfranchised. Registration problems have been cropping up. I'm going to show you a website. I think it's over my shoulder. It's going to come over my shoulder in a moment. It's Election Protection, a coalition of poll watchers, and they've been getting individual complaints from people saying, I registered to vote, I showed up, my name wasn't on the rolls. Those people end up having to vote on what federal law dictates to be a provisional ballot. It means the vote is eventually counted, but they have to show ID, and they aren't able to vote as easily and as smoothly as they intended to. In the state of Colorado, in the battleground state of Colorado, 9 electoral votes, a couple of big problems. The Secretary of State was still removing names from the voter rolls only a few days ago, even though federal law says that within 90 days of a federal election, you can only remove names of people who are either dead or imprisoned for a felony or have notified you that they've moved. Yet he was continuing to do it, so that is a conflict still in flux. And you can only imagine Palm Beach County, Florida. You remember, as you said, painfully what happened in the year 2000. That included people looking up at those hanging chads for days on end. Well, in Palm Beach County, and I'm going to give you a high-tech graphic I've worked up here, Dan. The ballot in some counties in Florida, including this one, looks like this, so that you have, say, McCain and Obama, and what they're meant to do is to darken the spot between the 2 boxes. But instead, some people checked one box or the other, and so election officials have had to examine them one at a time to see whether, if somebody checked it, what their intent really was. So it is shades of the year 2000. John McCain is challenging the state of Virginia, which he claims, and has filed lawsuit just today, he claims sent out its absentee ballots way too late, about 10 days too late, to give military personnel overseas, of course, Virginia has a lot of military bases, to give military personnel overseas time to get those ballots and get them back by the middle of the month. And so there are all kinds of things that could still stimulate, Dan, a legion of lawyers to pounce on this election, which would basically mean even by tomorrow, when we think we know who's won, if there are some battleground states where the outcome could change because of a legal challenge, it would be fair to say that the fat lady has not stopped singing. A few social issues to tell you about, because while all the emphasis obviously is on the presidential race, on the Senate races, the gubernatorial races, and so forth, there are more than 100 individual ballot issues, statewide ballot issues, some of them proposed constitutional amendments, all over the country. About 2/3 of the states have them. Here are just a few interesting ones I'll tick off before throwing it back to you. On the subject of abortion in South Dakota, and again, none of these are states where we're calling the ballot issue, but just want to tell you what they are and how they're going so far. In South Dakota, a proposed ban on abortion, with exceptions for the mother's health and rape and incest, is losing, but earlier it was winning, but the numbers are still too small. In Colorado, a very interesting proposed constitutional amendment that never says the word abortion, but what it says is that a person is a human being defined as a human being from the moment of fertilization. That is going down right now big time in Colorado. If it were to win, then of course it would mean that even such things as the morning after pill could be considered illegal because you're killing the fetus. In Florida, same-sex marriage, one of 3 states taking up same-sex marriage. Right now it is winning. Actually, it's winning big time. About half the states have bans on same-sex marriage, meaning they have either statute or constitutional amendment that says marriage is only between a man and a woman. Florida looks like it's joining those ranks. The big fight on that same issue in California, but of course they haven't stopped voting yet, but something upwards of $60 million have been spent by one side or the other in California. In Missouri, English looks like it will become the official language, one of 4 states where immigration is an issue. And finally, on income tax, the state of North Dakota and the state of Massachusetts have decided not, despite proposals on the ballot, not to repeal their state income tax, according to the trends so far. The mayor of Boston had called the whole proposal hookah hogwash. He said, you got to pay for these things somehow. Dan, you are the master of local colloquialisms. Maybe you've heard of hookah hogwash. I never have.
No, I haven't heard of it, and I'm not the master of anything. But nonetheless, thank you very much. It brings up to date on a lot of material that we wanted to get up to date on. Folks, if you're at home and you're saying to yourself, listen, it looks to me like this is going to be some kind of Obama tsunami tonight, wiping the boards. Want to show you our map again if we can get it up. Things are looking up for Senator Obama, looking good for him at this hour, including, you can bet that there were some hoots of celebration when at least 2 networks said, okay, Ohio is going to go in the Obama column. However, again, cautionary note, you may get tired of hearing this, but want to make sure you understand that we look at the information with the help of the Associated Press and say, we see the same information, but we're going to be cautious here, and we'll have a call when we feel confident in making it. That's where we are with Ohio. What you have so far is, as the evening has progressed, some news that gives the forces of Senator Barack Obama occasion to at least small, if not smile. And here's one. In Ohio, our best judgment is, after a long fight there, that Senator McCain has just rolled snake eyes. He rolled the dice and lost. Barack Obama, 20 electoral votes in Ohio, and here with our live studio in the museum, I can hear it get quiet for a second. Everybody kind of drawing in their breath because they know the potential of this. Ohio is where John Kerry was effectively defeated. He lost the state in 2004. When he lost Ohio, he lost the election. Ohio was also key, along with Florida, in the 2000 election. So here's the way the map looks now, and it's beginning to look ominous for John McCain. The whole northeast section of the country, including New York's big 31 electoral votes is expected, the whole northeast part of the country, including Pennsylvania, where John McCain and Sarah Palin poured themselves into it, hoping against hope they could get Pennsylvania to go their way. Wasn't to be. When you say, well, why would I say he rolled snake eyes in Ohio? Because although he wins in Louisiana, John McCain winning Louisiana with 9 electoral votes, having lost in Ohio, there's got to be some exhaling going on in the camp, and then a quick deep breath in for John McCain, because Ohio is the big story of this hour, that we feel confident now in saying Ohio is going to wind up in the Obama camp. So if, as has been the case so far, that Barack Obama carries every state that John Kerry carried the last time, and now having added Ohio, that in the case of John McCain, a veteran senator, before that a congressman and a war hero, they could be playing requiem for a heavyweight with these Ohio results now in. But I want to remind ourselves, as remind you, the polls are still open in some places in the West. And if you haven't voted, we want to urge you to vote. For one thing, it's your duty. We keep using that word. And we live in a country where words like duty, honor, valor still have some meaning. Duty as a citizen, and if you want to be an honorable American citizen, you got to show up at the polls if you're physically able to do so. So if you have time to vote and the polls are still open, then go vote. Come back and we'll go over the coverage. Maybe you won't have missed much, but go vote. And if you live in a state where the polls have closed, and you're saying to yourself, well, I think it's over, particularly with Ohio going for Obama. Keep in mind that in politics, what we most expect sometimes does not happen, and what we least expect often occurs in politics, and it could be the case tonight. Now, Florida for John McCain becomes even more important now, because you can write a script. I'm not writing the script for you. You can write a script where John McCain still wins this election. And I don't want to hear anybody saying, oh, come on, Dan Rather's just trying to keep things alive. Mathematically, that is the case. If you want to bet it another way, one would understand it. The winds are certainly blowing in Barack Obama's direction. But if John McCain could pull out Florida, you can still write at least a reasonably believable script where he could win the presidency. If you feel differently, Todd Harris, speak up.
If he could pick up Florida, North Carolina, Virginia, there's still a lot of big states that are out there. As we've said all night, a very steep climb for him. But I want to echo the point that you were making earlier, because if you strip away all of the politics, the he said and she said of this campaign, and you just sort of, if you put on your American hat and you think about the historic nature of this election, if you're an Obama supporter and you're out in California, even if you think that he's going to win, go vote, because this is your chance, your first chance ever to vote for an African American as the nominee of a major party. If you're a McCain supporter, here's your first chance ever to vote for a woman running on a Republican ticket. So no matter which choice you make, you have an opportunity to be a part of history, and regardless of what you think is going to happen in terms of the actual results, it really is incumbent on all Americans to turn out and vote.
Well said. I want to put up the numbers from Virginia, because Virginia's been hanging out there for a long while. The Obama people had high hopes in Virginia. This is with 74% of the precincts reporting in Virginia, and McCain leads. It's a slim lead, 50 to 49%. But again, saying, okay, let's do the math here. Can McCain win? If McCain were to win Florida, we've said the portents there don't look all that good for him, but if he wins Florida, and if he holds on to this lead in Virginia, and if he can carry North Carolina, the Democrats have won the Senate seat in North Carolina according to our projections, but we don't know how the presidential race is going there. You have a situation where the yes we can McCain camp would have a case to make. So we keep right up to date on Virginia. And also Indiana has not yet fallen in either category. And now we move to the West. The focus of the campaigns, and with many people who follow politics carefully, will be on New Mexico, Colorado, and Nevada, because those are states that the Republicans got the last election and where Barack Obama thought that he could pull in this time. We put up the Indiana board just for the moment to show you where things are in Indiana. And in Indiana, McCain, again, with a narrow, somewhat wider lead than he has in Virginia. And this is, again, with 70% of the precincts reporting. So things are looking good, at least for the moment, for John McCain in Indiana. And keep in mind how hard Barack Obama campaigned to win that state away from the Republicans. Right now, the wind is blowing in John McCain's direction in Indiana, as it is in Virginia. And in Florida, you tell me, George Lemieux, that earlier you said it looked like a really steep uphill climb for McCain. Anything improved for him in Florida?
No, it really hasn't, Dan. It's structurally really still tough. Palm Beach County hasn't even really reported anything but early votes in. That county, under any circumstance, is probably going to go at least 60% for Obama, could be more. Broward County, with half of the votes in now, is showing a 200,000 vote win for Obama. If that trend continues, right now Barack Obama is up 140,000 votes statewide over John McCain. There is, you can play some scenarios forward where we would, Sarasota might turn around. That's a split even now. The Panhandle might outperform, but knowing Florida as I do and as Todd does and others do, right now it looks like a very steep climb for Senator McCain.
Which isn't to say that he's lost Florida. We're not at that point yet. Let's put up the board on Colorado. Polls have now closed in Colorado. It's still very early on. This is with about 15% of the precincts reporting, and Barack Obama has jumped out to an early lead. Again, as we've said in the case of some other states, mixed in here are the early voting totals. And the early voting totals, according to both of the camps, tended to be for Barack Obama. This doesn't mean that John McCain can't still carry Colorado. It does mean that Barack Obama, with 15% of the precincts reporting these are the actual votes in, and Obama has 54%. Again, the states in the western section getting the most attention during the campaign, Colorado, New Mexico, and Nevada, reasons being that Democrats thought they could get them to be turnover states in the presidential race. We'll see as time goes along. Todd, what are you seeing? What are you hearing there? Florida's still out. North Carolina's still out. Virginia's still out. Indiana's still out.
Yeah, there's still a lot of big states that remain out. I've been in communication with a lot of my friends, both in the McCain campaign and within Republican circles, and I can tell you that there's a lot of drinking going on, but it's not celebratory. People are not feeling particularly good, not only about the presidential race, but you look at, as we talked earlier, about the Senate races. You look at just the avalanche of Republican House members that are looking at their last few months now in office. It will be a very dark time for Republicans, regardless of what happens on the presidential race. A lot of Republicans and on a personal level, a lot of Republican staff members, and remember, a lot of these kids are 22, 23 years old, going a lot of people out of work come the next couple of weeks.
Well, I want to put up something we've been trying to get to, and Donnie Fallon, I'll come back to you in a moment. You know, it's an election season where we've heard so much about a new generation of young people getting involved in politics. So we thought we'd try something new ourselves by turning to the next generation of young journalists at colleges and universities in key battleground states across the country to bring us the sights and sounds of Election Day as they experience it. We go first to Hampton University in Virginia.
I expected it to be long. Determined whether, do I wait later in the day or do I go early, and said, you know what, let's go get in line, get it done. Stand half a line, got to stand, and go get some breakfast.
I'm so pleased that there are so many students who understand how important not only this election is, but how important voting is. There are so many people who have really fought, bled, and died for the right to vote. And so when one has that opportunity, one should take advantage of it.
I think everybody's just kind of anxious, really, talking about, this is a big, important election, wherever it goes, whoever wins, it's going to be a big change for the country.
You can. Back with Dan Rather Report special election night coverage here on HDNet from the museum in Washington, D.C. Well, in the case of New Mexico, keep in mind the polls have not been closed very long in New Mexico. There is one of the networks who's jumped out, and I don't say that in a derogatory way, and said that they think New Mexico has fallen in Obama's column. We're not at that point. We may not be at that point. As we try to explain as we go along. We look at the numbers. Sometimes we see them in a little different way. We consult with the Associated Press, which is the platinum standard when it comes to calling races. And where we are is the polls have closed in New Mexico. And this is the way it looks with 4% of the precincts reporting. These are votes actually in and counted. This is not a matter of somebody calls. We make a call, we put a check either under John McCain or Barack Obama. And while you can make an argument that things look like they're going John McCain's way on the basis of these votes in and counted, there are many other things come into play. And there are some signs in various precincts and areas of New Mexico that are looking promising for Barack Obama, but that doesn't mean he's won. This is the way the editorial of the Electoral College map takes 270 to win, remember, looks at the moment. And I'm going to ask Donnie Fowler to double check our math. The blue states, those in dark blue, all of them were states that were carried by John Kerry the last time, with the big exception of Ohio. Ohio has been colored in blue, which means we feel confident in saying it's going to Obama. That could be absolutely key for him. All the states in red, these are states that were carried last time by President George Bush, including Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, South Carolina, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, so forth, Wyoming going up. Now, in Colorado, where the polls have closed a short while ago, these are what the numbers look like in Colorado. And this, again, is with a relatively small number of precincts reporting. And while Senator Obama felt that he got a good value for dollar spent in getting early voting totals out, John McCain was campaigning at a late hour even today in Colorado, I think, certainly in the last 24 to 48 hours, spending a lot of time there, believing that he might be able to keep Colorado in the Republicans' column. So we'll see as that goes along. If we can get up Virginia, I want to show you something in Virginia. The last time we looked in Virginia, I'm not sure our graphic will show it, there were, this is the way it looked. And you do the math there, and it's about 20, not even 20,000 votes difference between the two. This is about as tight as it gets. That they're close here. You can't get a cigarette paper between them in Virginia. And this is after a lot of votes have been counted. We have 80% of the votes in and counted in Virginia, and it remains this tight there. And we call this an amazing race in Virginia. It's been an amazing race this whole presidential campaign. Maybe a television series could be made out of it called The Amazing Race. What a race it's been. And that battle in Virginia gives an idea of just how close it's going to be in some states, and is in fact that close in Virginia. It could be that close in a lot of states out there. Colorado, New Mexico, Nevada, Indiana has yet to be called. So Dahlia Lethwick and George Lemieux, really appreciate you being here with us. I want to give you an opportunity, if it's something you've been saying to yourself, I really want to say this before I get off the set for this time, then now's the time to offload it on us.
Well, I'll just say in conclusion, I think in the next 30 minutes you're going to know what's going to happen in Florida. We have a 69% of the precincts reporting, and while it is still numerically close of 3,395,000 for Senator Obama to 3,251,000 for Senator McCain, I think that you're going to see the fundamentals of it. They'll be able to call the race within the next 30 minutes.
Well, when listening to you, are you saying you think they'll be able to call the race unless something changes dramatically? It'll be called for Obama?
Yeah, I think it will be.
Well, I wouldn't call that a bulletin, but folks, you want to take that seriously. When somebody who's been involved with Republican politics in Florida, as long as our friend George has, and has been as influential in running campaigns and drawing together strategies, mark well, we haven't called Florida for John McCain, but giving you as much transparency as possible. We want you to know that unless something changes dramatically and changes in a hurry for John McCain in Florida, probably over the next half hour, it's going to be called for Obama. That's not a prediction. It's just telling you what we know, what we think we know, and what we don't know. And now, Dahlia Lithwick, you've been so patient with us here. Hope to talk to you as the evening goes along, but before this segment goes away, if you've been dying to say something, I've been frankly wanting to ask you about the Supreme Court, what all this can mean for the court, but give us at least a short burst now of something you think we ought to be paying attention to.
I want to loop back to something George said at the very beginning of our segment, which is the time for national election reform is not September of 2012. All the things that we're seeing going wrong now, provisional ballots, problems at the polling place, poll workers who are not trained, these are all problems we need to fix at a national level, and we need to fix it now because votes need to count. This is the kind of thing where we just hit the snooze button and we hope these problems work themselves out in time for the next round. These problems don't work themselves out. They get very acute. Voter confidence starts to dwindle. And I think that George's point is, let's not wait. Let's get these things solved. Let's look at what's happening in Ohio, in Virginia, all over the map, and start to think about solving them tomorrow.
Well, thanks very much, and that pause was only to say I'm on an exclamation point behind that, because given this investigative report we did well over a year ago on what's wrong with touchscreens and electronic voting machines, which were supposed to be the answer to punch card ballots, which were supposed to be the answer to just put a check mark on an old paper ballot. It is complicated, but listen, we're the can-do people. This is the can-do nation. And with something as vital, the red beating heart of what we are about and what we present to the world, we can do better. And it'll be interesting to see whether we just, state by state, precinct by precinct, continue to have excuses made and sort of limp along with the kind of problems we had, or whether somebody gets a hold and says, we're going to reform this, and the next time nobody's going to have to wait in line 9 hours to vote, and the next time nobody's going to punch a screen and find out later that where they punched registered on somebody else's home. But getting back to our results, it's 10 o'clock now, passing the 10 o'clock time, where we have additional polls closing in the 10 o'clock hour in the states that just flashed on in the yellow. That includes Nevada, where a lot of attention has been paid in recent days and weeks, with the Democrats hoping that they could pull Nevada in for Barack Obama. This is the way the electoral map looks at the moment, with 270 electoral votes needed to win. And by the way, see a check mark has gone up on Utah for John McCain. That was expected. It's another state that went for President George Bush the last time. It was expected to go Republican this time and has done so. Remember, the three western states where the Democrats thought they had the best chances were and remain Colorado, New Mexico, and Nevada. Iowa, projected winner now, and here at HDNet and Dan Rather reports, and with the help of the Associated Press, 7 electoral votes go to Barack Obama. Now, Donnie Fowler, when you see Iowa come up there in the Barack Obama column, what are you thinking?
If I'm the Obama campaign, I'm cautiously nauseous right now. That's the second red state to switch. Ohio was the first, and Iowa is now the second. The real trick now is there are only 4 blue states left for McCain to chase after, and those are tough states. California is probably not going to be a battleground state. Oregon, Washington, and Hawaii, the other 3. So it's a steep hill to climb.
Well, let's go to our friend Nate Silver from 538.com. Nate, been a while since we've gotten back to you. We want to give you a chance to blog and do some other things, but objectively as you possibly can, looking at things now, for John McCain, is it time to pour water on the fire, call in the dogs, and the hunt is over, or no?
I think it's 99.9% of the way to being over. He would have to win a state that no one thought would be in play, and Donnie named them. It would be Washington, Oregon, California, or Hawaii. None of those states are likely. They pulled out of that Pacific Coast region pretty early this year. I think it's mostly a question now of what Obama's number is going to be. I think, 100-to-1 odds against John McCain at this point. I think Obama's going to be somewhere over that 270 number, maybe just by a little bit, but maybe by a lot as well.
Well, Nate, seeing in Connecticut that we now feel confident in saying this is one of those House races that was watched on a nationwide basis. And the incumbent Republican, self-described moderate Republican, one of those Republicans who felt he could survive even if it turned out to be an Obama landslide, that Christopher Shays, by our estimate and that of AP, we now project he's going out of the House. And the figures below don't necessarily represent the margin. Those are votes in and counted. But the check mark means that we think Christopher Shays' days as a congressman are over, at least for a while, that he will lose his seat. That'll get a lot of attention in the morning papers and on the air during the evening, no doubt. Terry Nelson, glad to see you back. But tell us why the Christopher Shays race being decided this way will bring a sigh from a lot of Republicans, not all, because many Republicans I think didn't particularly like Christopher Shays.
Well, but Christopher Shays is the last incumbent member of Republican incumbent in the Northeast or in New England, and right now the Republican Party is shut out from representation in that region. And I think long term, we as Republicans as a party have to be worried about our ability to compete nationwide when in one region of the country we have no member of Congress. If I could jump in to echo Terry's point, you recall after the 2000 race and again after the 2004 race, this was a sentiment that was talked about quite a bit in reference to the Democrats in the South. People saying, how can you really be a national party if you've written off complete parts of the South as Democrats? And now with Christopher Shays gone, not a single House member, Republican from anywhere in New England. I think that the building blocks of the Republican Party, you don't need to look to 2010 to see what's going to happen. It's going to be incumbent upon the Republican National Committee, the NRCC, the National Republican Congressional Committee. They need to be in that region with resources, recruiting the right kinds of candidates, doing the right kind of organization, or else we can, kiss goodbye that whole region for years to come.
By the way, we're looking at this live picture from Chicago's Grant Park, and who knows what that particular cheer was about. But with Barack Obama now, by our projection, having at least a solid 202 electoral votes that he can count on, with 270 needed to win. And remember, California, Washington, and Oregon are out there, as well as Alaska and Hawaii, of course. And neither Colorado, nor New Mexico, nor Nevada have been called thus far. And while I ticked off those states, it's because if Barack Obama, that's where he's going to win it, if he's going to win it. There are plenty of people who think he's already won it. We are not among them. That more than mathematically, there still is a chance that John McCain could pull this through. Hard to make the case he can do it unless he carries Florida. And as we've been telling you for about an hour, the internals, as the pros like to call them in Florida, do not look all that promising for John McCain. But we'll have to see, as it goes along. In Chicago, at that place in Grant Park in Chicago, is our Dana Roberson, who's a reporter and producer for us on Dan Rather Reports. And Dana, if you're up on the phone, you might give us a sense of kind of feel about what's going on there, what it's like there. Well, cell phones sometimes go that way. Dropout time, we could make a commercial out of that, I suppose, if we chose to do so, but we'll try to get Dana up a little later on.
One quick
yes,
point
Todd,
that I wanted to make is I'm looking at the map, the delta between the electoral college count and the actual popular vote. I think it's important, as right now I believe Donnie's numbers are 202 for Obama to 75 electoral votes for McCain, which is, electorally a large margin. But if you look at the actual popular vote, and it's important for people to focus on both, although of course it's the electoral vote that gives you the victory.
Excuse me, Todd, just a moment. And we now project that McCain gets West Virginia, which I think gives him another 5. So it underscores your point that McCain has 202, but McCain now adding West Virginia, and we'll put up that total fairly shortly, I think, would have 80.
So that'll give McCain 80, yet there's really only a difference of about 700,000 votes nationally. Throughout the entire country, 700,000 vote difference, and yet because of where those votes are spread in key states, it gives Obama this huge lead that he has right now.
Well, we put up our Electoral College map here to show you, and it still remains true that with one exception, Barack Obama has not carried a single state that John Kerry didn't carry the last time, but that exception is a big one, being Ohio. And it's fair to say, if John Kerry had carried Ohio the last time, he would have won the election. This time, Senator Obama's carried it. In the case of Senator McCain, all those states in red are states that he's carried. But again, all these were states that President George Bush carried the last time. So if the trend continues, if the pattern stays this way, and the map stays this way, the question for John McCain, where is he going to make up Ohio? Ohio now having fallen for Obama, where can he make it up? Terry, where can he make it up?
Well, I would add one other state, that has changed sides from 2004, and that's the state of Iowa, in addition to Ohio.
Good point. Anchor era, that's true. Iowa is a place, we've called it for Obama now. Right. And so that's the second state besides Ohio.
It's hard, and as we look at some of these other states that were close in 2004, like New Mexico, it's really hard to say how John McCain could get a pathway to victory. We have Colorado that's still out there, which has been a very contested state, one that wasn't that competitive last time. Obviously, we still have Florida out there. It's difficult to see where he could aggregate up the numbers that he needs to put himself over 270 with the states that are still competitive and have yet to report their numbers.
So, Dan?
Yes.
I know we're not jumping ahead, but do you want to do the math, kind of the actual realities?
Well, I do. Just before we do this, I want to note that the over-the-airways networks are calling New Mexico for Barack Obama, if I understood what was being said in my ear correctly. I think I did. However, neither the Associated Press nor we are putting it in that column yet. Again, trying to be accurate as possibly can, fair to all possibilities, being, yes, without apology, a little cautious. We have not called New Mexico, but we want you to know that others have called it, and put that into the Obama column. And just as Terry Nelson was saying, that New Mexico, Colorado, Nevada are states that went for President George Bush the last time, but came in play for Obama with real chances to win this time. And there are those who say that Obama has already carried New Mexico. Now let's do the numbers. Let's do the counting.
So by the map that we're working with, if you give McCain a victory in every single state left, except for the 4 blue states, Washington, Oregon, California, and Hawaii. If you give McCain every other state, and I don't think he's going to win every one of them, he gets 259 votes, which is 11 short. So that means he's going to have to win either Washington State or California.
Well, and the odds makers say his odds are not very good of doing that. Well, that's a good piece of mathematics working there. Let's repeat it for emphasis, that if George Bush carries every other state that has not gone for Senator Obama, he would still need some combination of votes out of Washington, Oregon, or California.
Right.
Oregon,
he could
Oregon and Hawaii.
He could win both Oregon and Hawaii and get to 270. He could win a Washington State alone and get to 270, and he could win to California and he'd be safe.
Right. Well, I recognize for some people this is all as complicated as the wiring diagram for some electrical plant. But when politics is played by on the inside, this is the way people talk to one another. We've always said to you, we like to give you a look into the inside, how things work. This is the way political operatives speak to one another. It's not all that hard to follow. But keep in mind, this is playing the game of projections. If. What Donnie Fowler, who's worked in the Obama campaign, is pointing out is that it's not impossible for John McCain to win, but the possibilities of his winning are narrowing down as time goes along. But for what, maybe the 4th time tonight, say In politics, strange things happen. Do they ever? And unless we reach the point where we say we're assured of Barack Obama getting enough electoral votes to become the next president of the United States, or we're sure John McCain does, we're going to play the game straight up, no ice, no chaser, tell you what we know, what we don't know, and say to you, it's not over. It's not over by any means as yet, because with the many states you got out. If Florida tumbles one way or the other, and Terry Nelson and others have said to us it doesn't look good for McCain there, but if it tumbles one way or the other, we'll know more, and that could happen at any time. All the polls are not yet closed. Remember that on the West Coast, the polls don't close until 11 o'clock Eastern Time. Now, Dr. Drew Weston, you've been very patient as you always are with us. Psychologically, what's happened in this campaign? I mean, I for one, and I won't be hypocritical about it, when Barack Obama got into the race, said, well, you know, he's a young man with potential, but maybe running, 4 years too soon. And while there's a chance, not likely that he's going to get the nomination. What changed in the political, psychological world that made it he could win? He could get the nomination and come with at least a hair's breadth of winning the presidency itself.
I think 2 or 3 things really. One of them is that that this time again it's the economy, stupid. I mean, you can't get a worse economy than we have now, or at least we haven't seen one in 70 years. And the party in power, when the economy is this bad, always does badly. But that doesn't get to the question of how it was that he beat Hillary Clinton earlier. And this is where it comes down. It comes back to emotion and to the power of a charismatic figure. And he's a very charismatic figure against someone who was pretty charismatic about 8 years ago and seems to have really lost his spark this time. So I'd say, it's the combination of inspiration on one side and anxiety on the other about the economy that's really allowed him to what looks like march to a pretty big victory.
We'll take a pause and put up our Indiana board if we can. Indiana's been hanging out there for a long time. John McCain, this is with well over 80% of the precincts reporting. 11 electoral votes at stake there, generally a Republican state. John McCain has been clinging to a lead, but look what it is here now. You've got, help me, about 13,000 votes separating the two. Donnie?
I've been in Indiana for a month working for the Obama campaign, and the places that haven't fully reported yet are the 2 most Democratic counties, Lake County, which is the Chicago suburbs, and Marion County, which is Indianapolis. If you add the missing votes out of those counties, not missing, that sounds funny, the uncounted votes, then it's probably going to flip from what you're seeing right here, and Obama will pull out just a touch.
And is that a hope or a belief?
I believe that to be true. I also hope it to be true, but I believe that to be true.
If people recall from the Democratic primary, Lake County was the county that everyone sat there and waited and waited and waited to get those results. And you had, I don't remember what city it was, but the mayor of one of the cities,
Gary and Hammond.
The mayor of Hammond was blasting the mayor of Gary, Indiana, wondering where these results were. The Clinton-Obama race was in the balance there. So we may not know from Lake County for some time.
They're still counting early votes.
In Indiana.
In Indiana.
Which is one reason. And keep in mind, Virginia has not been called by us or the AP. Very close presidential race in both Virginia and Indiana. Apparently also in North Carolina. Yep. Although the Republicans, we project, have lost their Senate seat that was up for grabs this time in North Carolina. Florida, it's ever since Trigger was a colt, Florida seems to have figured so heavily in American presidential elections, and so it is again this time, because as we pointed out, Terry and Todd, both of whom have been Republican political operatives in the past, that Florida is a tough place to campaign. For one thing, it's expensive, a lot of television markets. It's a complicated place demographically. It's split even in poll closing times. It's always a difficult terrain for any politician, particularly one who's trying to, as Barack Obama was trying this time, as John Kerry tried the last time, and as Al Gore tried before, to split it off from a party where it's been home for Republican presidential candidates for so long. But Terry, it's impressed me, many of our viewers, that while unquestionably you would like John McCain to carry Florida, and certainly Governor Christ and others there would like it, as objectively as you can, what you say is that the wind still blows in Obama's direction in Florida.
Well, I think when you look at Florida, there's still a lot of downstate votes to come in. It is an extraordinarily diverse state, but that downstate, those 3 counties down south, Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, provide a significant chunk of Democrat votes, and there's still a lot of those to be counted. And given that, it's hard to be hopeful about it. Now, obviously, there's still some stray votes here and there, but there's a big chunk of Democrat votes to come in.
Just to echo what Terry was saying, not only is Florida big in terms of being expensive to campaign in, but it's big geographically. I remember in 2002 with Governor Bush doing bus tours through the state, and you never realize how far it is from city to city to city until you're sitting in a bus lumbering along at 50 miles an hour. It's also in many respects a bit of a microcosm of the country at large. You've got a very diverse Hispanic population, and people always think of it only as Cuban population, but that's actually not true. In Miami-Dade, heavily Cuban, but in the Orlando I-4 corridor area, a huge Puerto Rican population, a lot of Colombians, Venezuelans, pretty much you name it, the entire Latin American rainbow is represented in Florida. And then through that I-4 corridor, significant independent voters. You continue to head north, very conservative panhandle, a lot of culturally conservative voters and a lot of military voters. And so in order to carry a state like Florida, you've got to be able to appeal to a huge, diverse group of voters.
This may be as good a time as any as we wait for more returns to come in, and when we have more returns to show you, we will do so, and particularly when there's a state to call, Florida, Virginia, North Carolina, Indiana, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, all of them still out there, not called for us. But we want to talk about some other subjects here, including race and the campaign, where things go from here in terms of each of the two parties, that even when the results are a little slow to come in, we'll be talking about some of those things. In the meantime, we're going to take a break. We'll be back with you after first, please, these messages. Take it now? Yeah, somewhere along the way. Yeah. Okay.
20 seconds.
No problem.
15.
I do. I hear you loud and clear. Thanks. Back at the beautiful museum in Washington, D.C., where we're headquartering tonight's Dan Rather Report special election night coverage. Welcome back to high-quality, high-definition television here on HDNet. What we're trying to do this election night is at least a version of what we try to do with our weekly program on HDNet, Dan Rather Reports, which premieres each week at Tuesday night. It's repeated during the week on HDNet. We try to specialize in investigative reporting, international reporting, politics. We're also always interested in hard-edge field reports. That's what we do in our weekly news program. We've tried to bring that same spirit to this election night coverage. We don't have all the graphics. We don't have all the flashy sets that a lot of people have, but we try to give some added value, which we'll continue trying to do because, among other things, this race is not over. That it's, according to our latest count, again, I'm always counting on Donnie Fowler to double check my math here, Barack Obama with 202 electoral college votes, with 270 needed to win. That's because that all the states in red now, with Texas popping in, the home state, the adopted home state of President George Bush, goes into John McCain's column with 34 electoral votes. There never was much doubt about this, even in the Obama campaign's mind, because they took some Texas workers and said, will you please go into New Mexico? Because in effect, we think we have a chance to win New Mexico. We don't think we have a chance to win in Texas. And by the way, speaking of the political brain, Dr. Drew Weston, I want to call on you that one of the things that has impressed about the Obama campaign, there have been some impressive things about the McCain campaign, but one of the things has been, this is a campaign in which they've been terrific about their discipline. You haven't heard any leaks coming out of the campaign. Whatever they may have thought about one another on the inside, haven't been any leaks coming out of the campaign. They've had a very good message discipline. They also had a strategy. Their strategy was basically, listen, we're going to take it on the offense. We want to be on the offensive. Who makes those decisions in campaign? Do they come to someone like you and say, well, Dr. Weston, you have some training about the political brain. Tell us how to operate. How does that work?
Well, no, they got some advice from me along the way, but most of those decisions, I'm sad to say, were not made by me. Those are made by David Axelrod as chief strategist, and by Barack Obama, and by a handful of people at the top. Although they turned to outside people a lot when they hit bumps along the road. But your point is a good one. I mean, in some ways, I think. Governor Palin's going to come to regret her very funny joke at the Republican convention about how a community organizer is sort of like a mayor, except you have no responsibilities. It turns out that the guy who's the community organizer actually knew how to bring people out to the polls, and it may be a big piece of what makes the difference.
That it did. Todd, and drop in here, Harry Nelson, if you have something. There are those, and not all of them Democrats, who believe that what happened with John McCain, whether he goes on to pull one of the great upsets and comes from behind and wins now or loses, that what happened with John McCain is that he and his campaign got stuck with, if you will, the last war. They took the Karl Rove model from 2000 and to some extent 2004. It wasn't Rove's alone by any stretch of imagination. You see the point, that McCain said, okay, these guys know how to win, I'm going to follow this campaign. Whereas Barack Obama, perhaps because of his youth, but also because new to the game, said we're going to find a new intersection between the new technology, things like web, video, blogging, a new view of racing. So in effect, John McCain in football terms got stuck with a single wing offense when everybody else had gone to the wing split T.
Look, I think that John McCain always had a tough fight in this campaign. It was always an uphill battle for him. But I think one of the things that's true now, having had the campaign play out for the last year or so, is that he always also had a difficult time, communicating a compelling vision to the American people about the direction he would take the country, for perhaps a variety of reasons, and that really, I think, also got in the way of being able to separate out from President Bush. He would often say that he was different than the president, and he would point to specific things, and it's very true that he's different from the president. But you also have to be able to say the direction you're going to go that's different than President Bush. And I think that was the one thing that he struggled with in the course of the campaign.
Todd, what do you think?
I think Terry's absolutely right. When he talked about all of the ways that he was different from President Bush, and he certainly is and was, but he would talk about things that he did in the past. You know, he was against Guantanamo, he was against torture, he supports taking action on global climate change. But he never painted a compelling vision going forward of how a McCain administration would look different from the Bush administration. And after 8 years of President Bush, given this political climate, given the economic climate, people want change, which is why you see, it's incredible when you think of this in terms of product branding, signs for Barack Obama, they don't even say his name, it just says change. And people know across the country, they know that change means, if you have a sign in your front yard that says change, that's an Obama supporter. An incredible melding of change, and they have other ones that say hope with the Obama brand.
It's pretty amazing after 2 years of campaigning that we are actually exactly where we started. This election was always about change versus experience. And Obama always owned the mantle of change. Hillary Clinton tried to beat him by claiming experience. Then John McCain tried to beat him by claiming experience. But the American people, in an overwhelming margin in the exit polls, a third of the American people said they wanted change, and only a fifth, 20% of the American people, said they wanted experience coming out of the polls. So it's an absolutely consistent election. That's really extraordinary. Can you consider all the ups and downs and all the great stories and elections we've been through, that it really is exactly where we started on day one.
Well, Dr. Winston, keeping in mind that, and I'm not here to make a case for John McCain and why he wins or loses, but a second-term presidency, which rightly or wrongly, justifiably and unjustifiably, fell out of favor with the public. You'd have to go back to Herbert Hoover to find a president this late in his presidency, I think, who's held in such low esteem by the population, including many people who had voted for him. That may change with history, I'm not saying to that. But here's the point. You had that. A two-term president who fell into bad reputation, sour reputation with the population. Wars on foreign fields. The war in Iraq already lasting longer, much longer than World War II. An economy that I would sort of say suddenly, but whether you think suddenly or otherwise, went to hell in a hat. Could any Republican carry all that and win against almost any Democrat?
No. I mean, if you just listed off all the major predictors of electoral success and failure from the best predictive models from political science. If you are a member of the incumbent's party and the incumbent's unpopular, if you've got an unpopular ward, if you've got a bad economy, you're starting out with 3 strikes against you. I'm not sure anyone could have won who was a Republican. That's not to diminish anything that Barack Obama did. You also had the difference between a charismatic and an unccharismatic candidate, and you also had a difference in a message, a very positive message. It took Barack Obama a long time to get to the negative message about McCain, that McCain was a continuation of Bush. He didn't really do that until September, but against a candidate who really didn't have a positive message. His message was just, I'm not the hope guy, I'm not the change guy. Well, I'm the change guy, but not the hope guy. And Hillary Clinton had already tried that. I'm not hope, and I'm experienced, and this guy is too wet behind the ears. It already hadn't worked. So I think, in some ways, I think McCain was defeated twice by George W. Bush. Once by dirty tricks in South Carolina 8 years ago, and this time I think Bush got him again by really destroying the economy and our place in the world. And I think in that respect, he was doubly hit by George W. Bush.
Well, Terry Nelson may have a little different view, at least part of it, about the 2004 race. But I'll come back to you shortly, Terry. But right now, let's go to Nate Silver, 538.com guru for us. Nate, what do you got?
Situation's basically unchanged from 20 or 30 minutes ago. I think we're still waiting for some of these states, like Virginia, where it looks to me there's a bunch of vote still to come in Fairfax County. It's where Obama's leading so far. It looks like that will probably be called for Obama in the next half hour. You talked on set about Indiana. It looks like there is still some Indianapolis vote, some vote in the northwest Chicago suburbs. It looks to me like Obama's count is going to go up pretty soon. I think the question is whether you'll get a call in one of those states first, or waiting for California and Oregon and Washington to close their polls, so he might win out west instead.
What are you blogging, Nate? What are you telling people in your blog?
Well, we're trying to look at where the Republicans are maybe holding their seats. The Louisiana Senate race is a little bit closer than anticipated so far. It looks like they're going to hold on to Mississippi and Kentucky in the Senate, 2 states where Democrats thought they had a shot. Georgia we know less about. There's such a big vote in Atlanta, which has yet to be counted, that that'll change the whole dynamics of that race. I think McCain will win the presidency there, but Jim Martin, the Democrat, might hold on to get a runoff in that Senate race, in which case we have another month of, kind of poll watching, I suppose. But so far, not a horrible night for Republicans in the Senate. They haven't lost any races they were expected to win so far, but certainly in the presidency and in the House, it's been a long night for the GOP.
Nate Silver in our war room here, keeping up with the web, video, blogs, and that world has become so important, not just in the political life in this country, but in many ways in the whole social and economic life of the country. We tried earlier to get Dana Robertson, Dana, our HDNet, Dan Rather Reports, producer, correspondent, who's at Grant Park in Chicago, up. There's some hope that the cell phone will work this time, won't have a dropout, so let's try it again. Dana, if you're with us, what's going on? Well, it looks like rain for one thing, and
Hello?
Dana? Well, I was going to say howdy, ma'am, tell us what's happening, but I fear either we've got the wrong number.
Oh, hi, Dan.
Hi, Dana. You don't know how surprised and pleased we are to hear from you. What's happening there, please?
Hello? Hey, Heather?
Well, folks, speaking of rolling snake eyes, we've rolled snake eyes twice on trying to get this telephone complete. So I'll tell you what, Dana and whoever's listening on the phone, I'm going to say adios for the moment. We hope to see you along the trail. Donnie Fowler.
Yes.
That we've made an effort, I hope a yeoman effort here tonight, to level with the viewers, give them as much transparency as possible about, okay, the wind may be blowing this way right at the moment, but it could change. The hour is now growing late, with polls closing soon in Washington, Oregon, California, all 3 of which the Obama people have very high hopes. Right now, if you look at our screen, it's not that bad, if you will, seeing it from McCain's standpoint. Obama with 202, McCain with 114. Not where he'd like to be. By the way, we're just now projecting and putting officially for our own purposes, whether you choose to see it that way or not, Barack Obama's 5 electoral votes, getting 5 electoral votes in New Mexico. I know if you've been switching around and say, well, listen, some other places called that a long time ago. Yes, and give them full credit. But one more time, at least one more time, to say that the Associated Press and ourselves working here in some conjunction, we depend on the AP mightily. They tend to be cautious with calls, and so are we. I'm told that Kansas, I'm not sure that we already have Kansas up, but the important storyline of the moment is New Mexico falls for Barack Obama. Now, the significance of that is, Todd Harris?
Well, I mean, this is the southwestern state. This is certainly an area, large Hispanic population. When the McCain campaign 6-7 months ago was looking at parts of the country where they thought that they could really compete, where they could do well. Of course, McCain's position on immigration, which so infuriated so many conservative Republicans, endeared a lot of Hispanic voters. New Mexico, a huge Hispanic voting population. This could have been a state in other circumstances where McCain could have been competitive. It's looking like it's not going to be that way.
Well, we put it into Obama's column. Now, let's do our math projecting forward here, Donnie Fowler. New Mexico goes for Obama.
Yes. So if you give Senator McCain every state left that's red, including the ones that are still toss-ups, Indiana, Virginia, North Carolina, and Florida, Senator McCain gets 254 out of the necessary 270 electoral votes.
That is, if he sweeps every other state.
He sweeps every red state. Every state left. Only 4 blue states are left, what we were talking about earlier. Washington, Oregon, California, and Hawaii. McCain has to win one or some combination of those 4 states, which is a tough row to hoe.
Well, Terry Nelson, having been through this a time, fair to say that the noose begins to tighten on McCain.
Well, I think that's right. I mean, all the states that are out there, that he has to win some of these blue states, and the blue states that are left to win are states that are extraordinarily strong for the Democratic Party. They're states that there's really not been much contention in this election cycle, and it would be very surprising if he won any of them. In addition, that some of these close states, Florida, Indiana, Virginia, appear to still have some fairly strong Democrat areas out, and so while they're close, and they might end up being close at the end of the day, you'd have to say that the Democrats look a little bit favored in some of these other states that haven't been called yet.
Well, go ahead, Donnie.
You've said it, Dan, several times. It is really important that people still vote. There's more than the presidency on the ballot this year. There's candidates all the way down the ballot, from senator to governor, all the way to dog catcher in some states. And there's also dozens of ballot initiatives that really affect people's daily lives in a very big way. And so while the McCain campaign is doubling up their get out the vote efforts in California, it's still important for voters to realize that this election is about a lot more than just the White House, even though that's what we're all focused on.
And I want to emphasize again, the White House part of it hasn't been decided yet. Put numbers in Florida. This is with well over 80% of the precincts reporting, certainly over 80%. Barack Obama running at 51-48 over John McCain. And you see the actual vote total very close in there. However, as we've been saying all along, it depends on where the votes that haven't been counted so far, where they are, and how that turns out. And we've heard twice from 2 very experienced Republican campaign strategists, people who've been there, fought the good fight in Florida, who say, while they hope that somehow John McCain can pull it out in Florida, that again, the wind directions do not look all that promising for him in Florida. But now we come back to the point that even if John McCain were to carry Florida and every other state that is undecided for the moment that George Bush carried the last time, he still wouldn't have enough to win. He'd need some combination of either California by itself, Washington by itself, or Oregon and Hawaii. Alaska comes into play there a bit. And it's odds against, but not there for Barack Obama. And saying, by the way, that even if you look up and one candidate or the other has prevailed and you say, okay, I'm not going to vote, wrong for all the reasons we mentioned earlier, plus the fact there's so many things that are decided on the basis of everything, congressional distribution, how the districts are divided, who gets what districts. All those things which sound kind of dull and boring and deep into political minutiae are very important in the way they affect people's lives.
And I'll tell you, neither campaign has given up. The Obama campaign in the states that have already been declared and the polls are closed, those workers and volunteers are now being redirected to call Western states.
Right.
So you've got people from Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Florida, where the polls are closed, now turning their attention to Nevada, California, and these other states that are still open out there. And I'm sure the Republicans are doing the same thing. But there's still campaigning going on. This has not stopped.
You bet. If we get it up again, we had the Virginia vote up there just a moment ago. This has been close all night long. This is now with over 90% of the precincts reporting. These are votes actually in and counted. 50% to 49% is the way it's running at the moment. Again, this is a state that George Bush carried last time and the time before that. and the Republicans have consistently won it pretty regularly in the last part of the 20th century and here in the early part of the 21st century. Close. We said going in Virginia and Indiana, states to watch. Well, neither one has been decided, even though now that the hour grows late. I want to give you an overview. We try to do that from time to time. For those of you who've been staying with us right through, including our live audience here at the museum in Washington, D.C., appreciate you folks still sticking around with us. And for those of you in the audience, I'd like to bring you up to date as often as we can. And you say, well, I know all of that, but sometimes people switch around. So let's try to put up our map, our electoral map. States in red, we feel confident saying have gone Republican. There is no state in red that John McCain has taken away and put it red from the Democrats. In other words, all of the states he's won so far are states that George Bush won in the past. However, all the states in blue are states that we feel confident in saying when all the votes are in and calculated and tabulated will belong to Barack Obama in the Electoral College. And there are some turnover states for him. Ohio, you might want to say, being the biggest one. Iowa has turned over for him. And so now, and New Mexico, just called a few minutes ago by us and the AP, that with the math, which has favored Obama for at least about the last hour and a half, the math favors him even more now, but keeping in mind that miracles do happen. It's true that the Red Sox came from 3 games back to win the World Series in 4 against the New York Yankees. The U.S. hockey team beat the Russians in 1980. Texas Tech came back and beat Texas in 1 second. So these things do happen. Go ahead, Donnie.
There's some reasons why. We just talked about the 3 red states so far that have switched to blue: Ohio, Iowa, New Mexico. There are reasons that they've gone in 2004 to a different result this time. One is the age factor. Young people who have been turning out in significant numbers the last 3 elections for Democrats turned out this time, I think for the first time, in as many numbers as older people. So there are as many young people this time that voted as old people. That's a significant change in elections. McCain won old people by just over 50%, but guess Obama won younger people by 2 to 1. That's a big change from 2004. Another major change is, we haven't talked a lot about race tonight, but Obama's ability to cross the racial divide, his ability to make economics more powerful than race, has been one of the unbelievable stories of this. John Kerry lost white voters in this country by 17% in 2004. Barack Obama only lost white voters by 7%. That's making up 10 points as the first African American to lead a national party ticket. That's impressive. And that also is why the switch in Iowa, Ohio, and New Mexico has happened. This is on top of issues, of course, the economy and healthcare and the war. But these are significant, some would say progressive changes. Young people at record numbers. The racial divide has been crossed in a way it has never been crossed in this country before.
And I just want to add to that, because there's going to be no piece of exit polling that gets put under the microscope more than the race issue, just in terms of black, white, Hispanic, in terms of race by age subgroup. And not only did Kerry lose white voters by 17 points, Al Gore lost white voters in 2000 to George W. Bush by 12 points. And I've gone through, and again, we'll add the caveat that often these exit polls are not always reliable, but on the issue of race, I've gone through some of the key battleground states, and Obama actually won among white voters in Iowa. He won by 6 points in Michigan, by 16 points in Minnesota, 4 points in Wisconsin. He's tied right now among black and white voters in Colorado. And even places like Pennsylvania and Ohio, where people talked about, the Hillary supporters. Are they going to switch over to McCain? Will he be able to get them? He's down by 5 among
Virginia, Obama, 13 electoral votes. Sorry to interrupt you,
Nope.
Todd, but I know you wanted to interrupt you with this.
I think the fat lady's about to sing.
Well, Virginia sending its electoral votes in the Obama column, and we've taken our time about this. We've checked and double-checked. Our projection now is that when all those votes are been tabulated in Virginia, it goes to Barack Obama. Terry Nelson, I know you have to leave here in a few minutes. You've been very generous with your time. We appreciate it. When you were working in the Bush campaign in 2004, did you think in 2008 there was any real possibility that the Democrats would carry Virginia?
No, and in 2004 we didn't even spend a dime, and I don't think George Bush stepped into Virginia at all to campaign. It was a state that we always took for granted, and we were right to take it for granted because I think we won it by eight or 9 points in 2004. But clearly times have changed. There's some demographic change in Virginia, but people are both concerned about the direction of the country over the last 4 years, and John McCain was never able to, I think, get his message through to Virginia voters, and you have to give Barack Obama and his campaign credit for getting their message through and making sure that people knew what they stood for in a compelling way.
Dr. Weston, did you at the start of this 2008 campaign, I'm asking you to come hold cards out with me, did you think there was any real probability that Barack Obama could carry Virginia?
No. I thought there was a probability that he could win based on watching his speech in Springfield when he announced his candidacy. And you could see someone who looked like RFK, who frankly had the ability to connect with voters like RFK, like JFK, like Bill Clinton, like Ronald Reagan, like FDR. Those are probably the other presidents who stand out with that ability to connect with people. But the idea that he could take Virginia, no, I don't think anyone would have imagined that in a million years.
Todd, sorry to interrupt you before, but mathematically now, McCain can still win.
Well, sure, and theoretically I can fly, but it would be extremely, extremely difficult. Mathematically, yes, it can happen. For those who are looking for some ray of hope, California in 2003 elected a Republican governor and re-elected him in 2006.
And it's where Ronald Reagan comes from.
So Republicans can win in California. It's just really not likely.
Well, if I understood correctly, and sometimes I don't with the communications being what they are in one's ear and so forth, that we may be going to Arizona soon to hear something from Senator John McCain, or at least someone from his staff. That's not certain, but just we're standing by. And speaking of standing by, that I want to go quickly to, here's the scene. I believe this is the scene in Phoenix, Arizona, where the Republican faithful are waiting for some official or semi-official word on what's happening. I want to underscore to you, while Senator Obama gets closer and closer to being assured of the Electoral College magic number of 270, he's not there, at least not there yet, and voting is still going on on the west coast of the United States, Alaska and Hawaii. Of course, the voting patterns go later than they do in other places. But that's the scene we're showing to you live from Phoenix, Arizona. If someone of importance, never mind the candidate himself, comes out and speaks, we'll certainly go there. We've sort of danced around a little tonight without intending to do so, because we want to get results to you as soon as we possibly can. But at some point, Dr. Weston, I want to talk about the way race has played out and not played out in this campaign. And when you see Virginia, heart and soul of the Confederacy in many ways, a dependable Republican state since in more recent times. You just heard a former operative for President Bush say, we didn't spend a dime in Virginia in 2004, didn't have to, and so far as he could remember the candidate, as a candidate, the president never really spent much time in Virginia at all. Now to see it, I think a lot of people is going to be, Virginia went Republican. One would have thought that you'd see rocks grow or water run uphill before you'd see Virginia go for the Democrats again in the modern political era. So as they sometimes say in the comic strips, what happened?
Well, you know, in some ways we saw the beginnings of this with that macaca moment with Senator Allen a couple of years ago, where Virginians were confronted with a kind of an ugliness that they didn't like to see. And this is where, again, it gets to the difference between where people's conscious values are on race, which is we are no longer the society of Jim Crow. We're no longer a country where people consciously say, I believe that people ought to be discriminated against on the basis of their race or their gender or any other arbitrary reason. It's in the unconscious stuff. That's where people can get, where you can see the impact of continued prejudice. But the striking thing about this is, and it comes back to something that Donnie says, is if you look at the fact that young people are coming out in the numbers that they're coming out, when you look at the changing complexion of Virginia, particularly Northern Virginia, and when you look at the changing demographics in Florida and the different kinds of people who are called Hispanic but who are not all Cubans anymore. You look in the West now, you're starting to see the possibilities of a real realignment, because now you can't run on an anti-immigrant sentiment anymore and not expect it to cost you in the polls. I think it's cost them in Florida, the Republicans. I think it's cost them in New Mexico. I think it's going to cost them in some other states out there as well. So I guess my point is that the kind of conscious racism that used to be just common in our culture has really started to dwindle. Again, that doesn't mean that there aren't some ways, and I could tell you about some data that would scare you a little bit, but there aren't some ways that some of that unconscious bias isn't still there. I mean, the darker the skin of a black man, the longer his sentence will be in the state of Florida. And it's not conscious racism that's happening, it's just gut level unconscious reactions, and that's where racism is today.
I want to give our audience a standby, as we've been given a standby. We've been given a sort of a heads up from Arizona and the McCain headquarters there. In the next few minutes, something, we know not what, supposedly, allegedly, reportedly is going to happen. Speculation that the candidate may come out himself, other speculation that Governor Sarah Palin may come out. It may be something along those lines or something less. But just know we're alert to it. We make you alert to it. Not the biggest thing of the evening, but it'd be the first kind of official or even semi-official appearance by anybody out of the McCain camp. Certainly the high campaign that I know of, so it might be worth sticking around, watching and listening. Where we are in the race as a whole is that Senator John McCain mathematically can still win. It's going to take something on the order of a miracle of biblical proportions for him to win at this stage. However, and I want to check with Donnie and Todd, that Mississippi, by the way, some minutes ago we just couldn't quite get to it, 6 electoral votes for John McCain as expected in the Magnolia State, and so that'll add to his electoral vote total. But we talked earlier on about the prospects of this. There were a lot of people, both Donnie and Todd, who felt, listen, Senator Obama certainly has a chance here to win with well over 300 electoral votes. Some allegedly at least neutral estimators were saying 340, 350, maybe as high as 370 or so. Based on what we know now, is Barack Obama, does he still have the potential for that kind of win, or do we need to scale that down in terms of expectations?
No, I think that is very realistic in terms of not only what I think could happen, but actually what I would expect.
You still expect it?
Yeah, yeah. Because McCain has not picked up any states that would chisel away at that larger number, whether it's 330, 340, 350. McCain would have needed to win a Pennsylvania or an Ohio in order to take some of that margin away.
And he's lost both.
And he's lost both. And I think, again, to speak at this on a macro level, and we'll have plenty of time later to discuss what all of this means, but if Obama is to be successful tonight, I'll make a prediction right now, which is that the biggest fights in Washington over the
Excuse me.
Yep.
Bulletin.
Well,
Florida to Barack Obama, 27 electoral votes, and we've been as cautious and careful with this as we possibly could be, although The Republican campaign specialists were telling us an hour, at least 45 minutes ago, don't be surprised if it goes to Florida. Well, let's pause for a second and let this soak in. Florida's 27 electoral votes go to Barack Obama. He's already won Pennsylvania and Ohio and New Mexico, among the states that were thought to be in play and where John McCain fought so hard to try to hold on to. So now, mathematically, it gets much, much tougher to make a case that even under the heading of possible miracle, that John McCain can pull it out. Now, I'm not saying that it's so, but it raises at least the suggestion that when the McCain camp said, stand by, we may have something to say out of Arizona, that raises the prospect that it may be indeed something we want to hear. I'm not suggesting that I know what it is, I don't. But it's that time of evening when the math gets this way that one camp or another decides to say something. This picture is live from Chicago, where this crowd started building at least 5-6 hours ago.
Looks like they just learned about Florida.
And it may be that cheer went up that they just learned about Florida. That could very well be the case. So what we were saying earlier, while it may or may not be too soon to play a political funeral dirge for John McCain.
I think given if Barack Obama is successful tonight and comes into Washington with 340, 350 electoral votes, my prediction is that the biggest fights in Washington, at least over the next 2 years, are not going to be between Obama and the Republicans. It's going to be between Obama and his fellow Democrats in Congress, because you will have, particularly on the Netroots level, you'll have many, many people on the left of the Democratic Party who say, we've been waiting forever for this. We now control all levers of government. Let's really go and make liberal change. That's not what, if Obama is successful tonight, he wasn't elected to fulfill some liberal mandate. And I think there will be a lot of tension between him and many of the more left-wing portions of his party.
I want to give Donnie a chance to respond to that, but it's 11 o'clock in the East, closing time for the polls in California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and this could be the hour of decision. When we know the outcome of these states, we may be able, probably, we'll be able to say a bulletin. Projected winner for the presidency of the United States. This is from the Associated Press. As we said before, the absolute world platinum standard when it comes. The Associated Press projects Barack Obama will be the next president of the United States. Again, sometimes on television you don't pause to give you a chance to absorb something. By any objective standard, a historic moment in the history of the country. This is the crowd in Phoenix, where some announcement from some major parties expected shortly. As some of you know, I covered the civil rights movement. My regular assignment was to cover Dr. Martin Luther King in the 1962, 1963, and sometime later. And I grew up in a segregated society in Texas. And covering Dr. King was an education for me in a lot of important ways. But I never dreamed at that time, I never dared to dream that in my lifetime we would have someone of African American heritage elected to the presidency of the United States. And that I know that it's fair to say, because I didn't know Dr. King very well, didn't talk to him all that often, given all the hell he was going through. Very few reporters did, but I do know once, and I think it was around Albany, Georgia, and Dr. King was talking about the prospect, first of all, how outrageous it was that Americans of African heritage were not represented in state legislatures, had representation in the United States Congress, was talking about elective office in general. He didn't dwell on it, but it just was, this is another thing that has to be changed if we're going to lead, have the kind of America that we dream of having. And I certainly don't speak for him, but it was very clear to me, it remains so, that I don't think that even Dr. Martin Luther King believed that in his lifetime that we'd live to see anything like this, or any of the people around him, that some like Andrew Young and others may have dreamed that it would happen in their children's lifetime. But to see this tonight and have a situation in which a person of color, I've never liked that phrase, but an American of African heritage, to be elected a president of the United States, and elected by what now it seems clear, it doesn't take much projection to see. It's going to be, if not an overwhelming victory, a substantial victory in which, as Todd Harris has pointed out, he may very well come to Washington with that old quote mandate. What a mandate is in Washington and what it isn't is sort of is a fluid situation from time to time, but I would say if Barack Obama comes to Washington having won this election with anything more than 300 electoral votes, which we've pretty much agreed up here is well within his reach, that he will have a lot of what the politicians call stroke.